Hey everyone, this is Michael Zupan from Bite Size Impressions with another edition of the Greatness Delayed podcast for bitesizeimpressions.com. And it's been a long time, but here I am. I'm here with Gus. Gus, it's been a long time since we've chatted about, well, pretty much anything. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm hanging with a dad 2.0.
That's right. We just had another beautiful baby boy on
Well,
February 28th.
you did. I did not have a baby.
Well, yes,
You
we
did.
Gus and I did not get together and adopt a child for Bite Size Impressions. Um,
That we would have announced that. And
yeah, our baby mascot for the website. Yeah, my wife and I, we had a baby. It's our second boy.
congratulations,
Thank you
congratulations.
very much. Our oldest son, who will be 7 soon, he's always wanted a little baby brother, and now he has one. So he's been thrilled. We've been thrilled. But yeah, we're still adjusting. We're still trying to find our groove since the baby is just under a week old at this point. Um, so tiny, 6 pounds and 11 ounces. It's like, even though we've had a kid before, we've had a newborn at one point, it's really difficult to remember just how small and light they are. They're so tiny. It's difficult to get used to that whole thing all over again because all they do in the beginning is sleep most of the time. They say on average a newborn probably sleeps about 20 hours out of the day. So they're really just most of the time like eating and then sleeping and then, peeing and pooping basically. So it's easy in a way, but it's also not because that feeding schedule that they're on is like every 2 to 3 hours, and that includes, of course, throughout the middle of the night. So, my wife has been dealing with that. She wants me very much alive during the day so I could also tend to our other son and help her out during the day. So that's good. I took a couple of weeks off from work so I could just be home and help out and everything. So I've still got another week off from work.
Well, that
So
helps.
yes, definitely. And, obviously I love being home anyway, with the newborn and just seeing his precious little face all day, every day. And, but, at the same time, my oldest son, as excited as he's been for a baby, the baby's here. And of course, he has a little bit of that insecurity of like, what's going to happen to me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I've been very much trying to, I kind of feel like a double agent in a way. I've been leading like two lives because even the day that my son was born, um, I spent the first half of the day since he was born, like just after 8 o'clock in the morning that day, spent the first day at the first half of the day in the hospital. And then I spent the other half of the day like at home so I could see my other son get off of the school bus and to make him feel like, hey, it's not all about the baby still. Like I took him out to the mall. We did some mall walking, did some Pokemon Go together, took him out for some frozen yogurt and dinner. Um, so I've been doing that a lot too in order to let him know like you're still just as important as the other kid, and that's been helping a lot. But he's slowly getting into the groove of like this baby needs assistance and people have to kind of split their time still. But
So you're like slowly weaning him into the fact that like things are gonna change
yeah,
around a bit.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, tonight there was a moment where it was like he was like, "Oh, hey, Dad, can while Mommy's cooking dinner, do you want to like go for a walk around the neighborhood?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah." And then I was like, "Oh, wait a minute. But if she's cooking dinner and we're out walking, who's watching the baby? So we can't maybe do that tonight. So maybe I'll just go pick something up and then maybe we can do that." Um, so yeah, it's hard for him to adjust. It's been a little difficult for me to adjust as a result of him having that difficulty, but we're handling it about as good as we can, and I think he is too. At the end of the day, regardless of what he's going through, he still loves his little baby brother more than anything. So he came off the school bus today. The first thing he wanted to do was to sit on the couch and hold his brother and give him kisses. And so he has his mind and his heart still very much in the right place. He's not feeling like, like, oh, this baby's ruining everything. you know.
Not yet. Not until like not for a couple of years anyway.
I don't know. He's always been really good with babies and other children, you know, from like friends and stuff who have kids that have been younger than him. So
Okay.
I think he's actually going to be fine. I think a little adjustment period and he'll be okay.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's been a long time since we've done a podcast, and part of the reason is not just the baby, because obviously we're recording now. It's March 6th, and the baby was just born a little under a week ago. The last time we got together was the middle of January.
It's freaking March.
I know, and there's been a shitload of video games that have come out. There's been a shitload of video games that I've played, and I promise everybody, I have been meaning for the longest time to get on here and talk about all this stuff and some of the other stuff that has been going on with video game industry related stuff, and I just haven't been able to.
It's March.
I know. It's
My goodness.
I can't believe that we're already this far into 2017. Almost a quarter of the year is done. I mean, it's insane. But the reason why I've been away, I've had a really hard time in February with like health related stuff.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, I was telling you via, you know, messages on Twitter that
Sliding into my DMs,
yep,
telling me about the illness.
I got this nasty viral chest thing that's been going around. Like, you know, for weeks at work, I've had this person who's been sitting behind me in her cubicle, and like she was coughing like every single day. And it's not just her, like everybody had this going on. And I was like, I think I'm going to get away with this. I'm not going to get it this year. And nope, this year I got it. And I had a wellness checkup appointment, just a regular checkup with my allergy and asthma person, January 31st. And I mentioned to them, I said, you know, I've got this dry cough. Like, I don't like really feel like too much has been happening like in my chest, but I cough so much and so hard that like sometimes it makes me feel lightheaded. So like, I don't know if it's like getting worse and progressing. Like, should we be maybe like treating me like in advance so that I don't have difficulty? And he's like, well, your numbers are really good right now as far as your lung capacity and everything. So if it progresses into something, like, you know, just keep us informed. I said, okay. That was like a Monday or Tuesday appointment. Friday night, I had to go to urgent care because I was having difficulty. And, you know, it ended up turning into like a barking kind of a cough. I had, you know, chest congestion, and what that ended up doing was, you know, getting the inside of my lungs basically all inflamed. And they decided later on in the weekend, that weekend, to put me on some prednisone to keep me open. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's an oral steroid. It tastes terrible. The pill, it tastes really nasty, but that usually helps. This first round, this thing was so nasty. It was like 2 pills the first day, and then they wanted me to take 1 pill for the next 5 days after that. And then the day after I was done with that, like I started tightening right up again. And then the day after that, I was feeling so constricted that like I didn't even want to like expel the breath to talk.
Oh man.
And my anxiety was through the roof because like it's the morning of the day here in upstate New York where we're supposed to get over 10 inches of snow. It was just supposed to snow all day. So I called them, the on-call doctor, and said, this is not good. Like, why didn't this work? So they jacked me up on way more prednisone. I was on prednisone throughout most of February, which is not good because after a while, like it can have your body like retain fluid and stuff, and they don't want you to be on it for a long time, but if you have to, you have to. It seems to have worked. I'm here, I'm healthy now. But it was a very, very long month of just like feeling concerned that, hey, is this going to develop into pneumonia? I'm having a lot of difficulty, like feeling like I can't breathe so well most days. And I wasn't able to help out around the house much, even though my wife was like, you know, practically like ready to give birth. And it was a terrible month. It was terrible. And I was like, is this going to carry on into the birth of my child? And how is that going to affect everything? But fortunately, everything went away. The baby came, and I was good at that point, and the baby's here, and everything's smooth sailing at this point. So I just wanted to share that with everybody because fuck, man, February sucked.
Yeah, like the last week, I caught look, like I had a head cold, like nothing as severe as what you were going through, but like it was like the last weekend of February, I started like having a runny nose, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I thought it was, I didn't think anything of it, and I'm like, because usually when I'm about to get sick, I always look for the sore throat, and I'm like, if my throat's getting weird and it hurts to swallow, that's when I know something's coming down. And
Yeah.
then that Sunday that happened, and then like the rest of the week, that last week of February or whatever, like couldn't taste anything, and like a cold just dropped, and it was like miserable because like for me, like getting a cold is like you can get over that in a week, which I did. Like by the Switch launch, which we'll get into like a little bit,
Yeah, we will.
I was fine. I actually recorded an unboxing video with my friend with my Switch, which should go up soon. I'll link that
And
when it
just a
gets
little
public.
plug for you. You also have a video version of the podcast that you normally do. The nameless faceless, the faceless nameless, something like that, right?
Well, the number one, the name of the podcast is Fameless Nameless.
Okay, that's totally my fuck up. So yeah.
No, that's fine. Number two, that was not a video version. My friend Jenna, she was a I want to say two-time like beauty queen pageant winner in this state. First of all, but she and her friend have a YouTube channel, like a geek YouTube channel called Alchemist. Uh, ALCHEMSS. If you want to check their stuff out, it's good stuff. Invited me along to record like their February roundup video where they just talk about like the geek stuff that happened. And they had me come on to talk about like some TV stuff and like video games and stuff. So I worked on that with them, and then end of that week we did the Switch unboxing video, and that in between then and then is when I got sick, and then I got better.
Well, I'm glad that you got better fairly quickly because
Especially
I
for
do
the
not
Switch line.
wish what I went through on anyone.
I can't
I
imagine. And I'm pretty bronchial person. Like I use an inhaler and stuff like that. So like it sucks. And
so you get it.
I get it because when you mentioned the constriction, like that happened to me one night where like I got the cough. I started coughing, and it was like this dry cough, but that kind that just hurts your chest. And like
Yep.
one
Because every
night,
time I coughed, I'd feel like the flame in my chest. You know.
yeah, and like, and we're like into TMI territory, but like, it's
No,
just
it's cool. It's cool.
imagine,
Personal stuff is fine on a show.
just imagine like you cough so much that you can't breathe and you don't know what to do about it. Like your brain can't process
The
it.
thing is, like, I get really bad anxiety when I'm having issues with my asthma, and it's because a long, long, long time ago, like 1999 or probably 2000, I had allergies to animals that I didn't know that I had, and I was staying, at a place that had animals. So after being there for some months, I started having difficulty, and one evening, I just closed up. Like a nebulizer didn't do anything for me, and the ambulance got there, and I flatlined on the way to the hospital. So
Oh, whoa.
yeah, it was very scary. I remember the whole ordeal. Um, Passing out because you can't breathe is very, very scary. But I guess as far as pain and discomfort goes, I guess if there's one way to go, that might not be the worst ways to go. It's like you just kind of slip out of consciousness. But it's very terrifying. So when I have issues, like my anxiety can get so bad that like I feel like when I'm having real difficulty, and I know it, like that one day when the snowstorm was coming, I feel like I worry myself into like almost a state of shock, almost temporarily. That's how it feels. It's just it's so scary. Like I don't like messing around with this stuff at all. So usually when things start happening, they get pretty aggressive with me, which is probably why they just put me on prednisone throughout most of February. So yeah, I hate it. I fucking hate it. And I feel like this is not like the first time this kind of thing has been going around. Like this kind of viral cough that people have been getting, like I've noticed it's been happening the last few years, where it's not just like a viral cough. It comes and like people retain it for weeks. Like last year, my wife got something, and she's not even an asthmatic, and it hung on with her for like 2 months basically, and they still had to put her on like an inhaler, a steroid inhaler, and it ended up turning into pneumonia for her anyway. So like I feel like the earth is slowly changing viruses so that it can begin to fucking wipe us out, because I feel like a lot of people really can't fight this shit without the aid of antibiotics anymore.
Yeah.
And which is another scary thought, but you know, this isn't the podcast for that kind of discussion, I guess.
Welcome to the medical podcast where we dispense all sorts of useful information.
Yes, if you're having difficulty, you want to make sure that you have some kind of sort of maintenance steroid inhaler disc. There's Advair for that if you prefer.
Oh, I used to use Advair.
Yeah, that's
like the purple.
That's
the
what
purple
I take.
disc?
The purple disc. You got
Yeah. Oh, my dad uses that too, because it's like genetic. That's probably where I got it from.
Oh man, I'm so happy I can laugh about this shit right now.
Yeah, we're a virtual toast to our health.
So during that month, and even January, I've played a lot of the video games that have come out. Pretty much all the major ones.
Let me just say, I can't remember the last time I lost so many weekends to video games.
Yeah, like
it's been a while.
Unprecedented. Like this is the time of year that normally there might be a game, maybe two, that comes out in the first couple of months that people can sink their teeth into. But it seems like almost every fucking week, especially in February, where there's been at least one game to play. And that trend does not really seem to be stopping since the Nintendo Switch just came out. But the first major game that came out this year was Resident Evil 7, I guess, right?
Yeah, which I only played the demo from last year, so I can't say anything about it like that I know of, but I just know that everyone that has played it loves it.
I will say that prior to this game releasing, I had absolutely zero interest in playing it. I like Resident Evil games. I didn't care really for 5. 6 I didn't even play because so many people really said terrible, terrible things about it. So I wasn't really kind of that into it. Plus the fact that when we first saw footage for this game, I was like, this actually looks like it might be kind of cool, except for the fact that this just looks like Haunted House, the game. It doesn't really say Resident Evil to me. And, you know, there's also the fact that this started getting revealed sometime after the PT demo had come out and people went crazy about that. Now, I know realistically, in, you know, the timeline of things is that this game, Resident Evil 7, had to have been in development longer than people have been, you know, subject to the PT demo. It happened to just probably be a terrible coincidence that, you know, these similar styles of games ended up sort of lining up the way that they did. So a lot of people are like, oh, they're just capitalizing on PT. Yes and no. They didn't use PT as a template. However, I think the whole like releasing of the demo thing, I definitely think they were using PT as a guide for that. So that kind of turned me off a little bit because, again, Haunted House, the game. You know, there's Amnesia, there's Outlast. How many of these do we really need? How is this Resident Evil enough? So on and so forth. So when the game came out, I did what I always do for games that I seem to have very little to no interest in. I went to Twitch and I watched somebody playing the game there for about a half an hour, and I said, this actually looks like it's pretty damn good. I mean, the same thing happened to me last year with Doom. You know, a lot of people were kind of lukewarm about it because of the multiplayer testing that happened prior to the release, and the night before launch, I saw people finally playing that game on Twitch, and I was like, holy shit, I need to play that game. So I got my hands on Resident Evil 7 the next day, and I played through about 90% of it at this point. It's really, really good. What people have been saying about it is accurate. And not only is it really good as a Haunted House, the game sort of thing, it actually does feel like Resident Evil. You know, you're going through this huge house / mansion, whatever you want to call it, and you find your typical weapons. You know, your pistol, the shotgun. You have a knife, and ammo is scarce. It's very, very scarce. There were plenty of times throughout that game where I had to rely on nothing but my knife, and I didn't have enough health to really fight some of the creatures I was coming against comfortably without having to retry a couple of times and be very, very methodical about my approach. Your inventory slots that you have, they're very limited as well. So you kind of have to manage like what kind of things you want to carry and what things you don't. There's some puzzles in the game. They're kind of few and far in between. But yeah, like it definitely feels a bit more like a reinvention of Resident Evil in a very positive way than I thought it would have. Um, yeah, I can't recommend that game enough. It does what it sets out to do very well, and kind of going a bit deeper into why, I kind of feel like I'd be spoiling the game, because part of the fun of that game is not really knowing what's going to be happening around any corner. So if you haven't seen much of this game, if you haven't watched video footage and reviews, especially if you haven't been watching people play Twitch, go into this game as cold as you possibly can. My only complaint about the game, however, is that 3/4 of the game is almost expertly paced. And then once you get to the final quarter of the game, it kind of slows down a little bit because of the way the level design is. You're kind of going around a small area and backtracking a bit in a way that feels a little more a little more obnoxious than in the first 3/4 of the game. It's not quite as fun, but still overall, I mean, it's a very solid experience overall. I definitely recommend anybody getting their hands on that game and playing it, although maybe not so much, because there's a bunch of other games that came out and some of them are even better than Resident Evil 7. So I think, what was the next major tentpole release that came out after that? It's probably Neo, right?
Yakuza, well, for me, it was Yakuza 0, like the week after.
Ah, yes. That's another game I wanted to play. I didn't get to it. Tell people about that game, Gus, because that definitely looks like a lot of fun to me, even though I've never played a Yakuza game before.
Well, I hope people don't mind sticking around for the next like 12 hours, because I'm going to talk about Yakuza 0.
Go for it.
Now, put it this way, that game is like, if I had a game of the year right now, it would be Yakuza 0. And that's inherent bias, because I've been a fan of the series since like it came out in the United States. That was like 10 years ago. But Yakuza 0 is the prequel to the entire main franchise. There are like a few spin-off games that never came over here, but you play as the series protagonist, Kazuma Kiryu, and another mainstay character, Goro Majima, and you play as them in the late 80s. So this is set in like the late 1980s. Some historical context. It was like at the end of the Showa period, I want to say, and like when Japan was just like seeing this economic boom that eventually burst in the like the early into the 90s. That sort of plays a background role in that, but it's just, if you've ever played a Yakuza game, like it's just filled with all this awesome like melodrama, this hard-boiled action, but along the way, like if you play through the side stuff, it's just like this goofy ass like sitcom style stuff. Like for some I've seen some newcomers to the franchise where like some of them were kind of put off by like the shift in tone, but like it's just like, I love the new battle system where like the two characters have like several styles to choose from. And you know, you could just beat the ever living shit out of anybody in the street, like, and anybody that gets in your face in the street.
I've seen a lot of that fighting stuff in some of the videos online, and it definitely packs a punch when you're just watching it.
Yeah, it feels good. Like I remember like back in the first game when I was like iffy on the hook combat system, until like I kept playing every game that was coming out over here, so I got comfortable with it. But this is definitely like the most like fast paced like the combat's been, and it's the thing that makes me happy about it is that it seems like this has been a jumping point for a starting point for like a lot of people who have just never like really looked at this franchise before, and it's being a prequel to everything. Like it's a really good starting point, and we're getting the remake of the first game this summer supposedly, and I think next year we're getting Yakuza 6. But I mean, it's just definitely one of my favorite games. It's so fucking badass.
It kind of makes me wonder if there's like a danger for like burnout then from people like fans and newcomers alike, if that's the path that they're taking. I mean, it's great if you're a fan of the franchise and everything, but like that seems like a lot of Yakuza gameplay in a fairly short period of time.
The only reason I would make the argument for the opposite of that is because I don't want to be insular and just say we this fan base, but like Yakuza historically like hasn't done well over here in the West. Like it's a big hit in Japan, but like it for every entry that's come out in Japan, we've gotten it localized like a couple of years later. And I remember like back in when Yakuza 2 came out, I didn't even think like a Yakuza 2 was even coming here until then. Like they moved it to the PlayStation 3 era, and then Yakuza 5 came out 2015, which was like 3 years after it came out in Japan. So this is a pretty patient, possibly patient fan base, like just waiting for these entries. So like for me, when they had that PlayStation Experience event, and that's when they announced that Kiwami, the remake, and 6 were coming over here, like I was like flipping my shit. I was jumping for joy because this is like it's like the first time we've gotten a handful of Yakuza in the span of like a year.
That's pretty it's pretty awesome. I mean, like I need to wait until I have time to play Yakuza 0. I do intend to get to it at some point. And because it is sort of the prequel to everything, I do think it's a really great time to get into it. And I know that that remaster of the other game is coming, or the remake or whatever, but it kind of another thing too that kind of concerns me as someone who hasn't played the previous games is like, how much am I going to be missing by not playing the other games too that they're not remaking before Yakuza 6 comes out?
6, yeah. I'm kind of curious how they address that too, because at the very least, if you found 4 and it's available digitally on PSN, I believe.
Didn't they also just currently like do another run of these games on PS2?
That's what I saw. Some like Canadian shop, they like got these like new printings of this game, of the PS2 games, the first 2 games. Then they were like, and Amazon was selling them. I saw them on Amazon for like $50. I think I still have my PS2 like locked away, and I was like debating because I like sold off my old collection like a while back. I'm like, oh, I'm kind of tempted to like buy these again just to have them. But I know 4 like actually has like long storied movies of like the first couple of games that will like catch you up. And I wondered also like if they have any sort of plan to help, like if people were jumping on this series with 0 and they play Kiwami, like I just wonder like how do they catch up people with like from like 2 to 5 or something like that.
That would be a really great option for them to sort of kind of do some story follow up near the beginning of the game as a prologue or something. So anybody who really fell in love for the first time with Yakuza because of Yakuza 0, and they jump over to 6, or maybe even after the remaster of the first game, they'll be all caught up. That would be the smart thing for them to do.
Yeah, I hope they get that figured out, because there technically is like Kiwami is the remake. Like they took that engine from 0 and then retold the story of the first game. But there's also on PS3 like HD versions of the first 2 PS2 games, but that's out in Japan only. And I've been meaning to like see about grabbing a copy for PlayStation 3 and just like possibly going through it despite not reading a word of Japanese.
Is it disc or is it digital only?
Disc. I've seen it in disc. I don't know if it's on like the Japanese PSN store. Like I have a Japanese account on my PS3, but I don't
wonder
know
if it's like really a disc though, because like I actually a long time ago I imported Okami HD from Japan because it was a physical copy. Where here the only way you could get it is to get it through PSN digitally. But basically, I think once you pop the disc in, like you still have to download the digital game anyway, which is kind of a bummer. So, yeah, I wonder if they handle that the same way or if they've actually got it on the disc.
Yeah.
So, best of luck to you. Hopefully it's an actual legit physical copy.
But yeah, I'm just super. I've never seen like a Yakuza games get so much press than 0, and that made me happy. Like as a fan in the West.
Yeah, if I was a fan of that franchise and to finally see that it's sort of blowing up the way that it did based on a lot of positive word of mouth, I'd definitely be super happy about that. I love when shit like that happens.
Yeah, like it's like I guess when Persona 4 Golden happened, and it looked like that's when people like really started getting into Persona, and especially with 5 coming out in like in a month. My God. Uh, but yeah, I don't. I'm thinking about now. I think that was the last major release in January, and then February.
Things I think kicked off with Neo in February, I think.
That's right, yeah. And man, everyone. I hadn't gotten to play February's releases because honestly, like I had budgeted everything towards the Switch launch, so I honestly skipped out on stuff like Neo and whatever else came out in February. But man, like people really love that game.
I'll tell you, man, it's really fucking good. When I first saw the initial teaser trailer for Neo, I was on board pretty much immediately because, you know, I love Dark Souls, and it definitely looked very much like Dark Souls as far as the gameplay was concerned, but it had that Onimusha kind of vibe to it as far as like the visual flair, you know, because it's all samurais and shit. So that definitely intrigued me quite a bit. But of course, I was always skeptical still all the same anyway, because up to this point, nobody's really been able to do Dark Souls like From Software has. And that's always been a concern. Like Lords of the Fallen came out a while ago, and from what I understand, because I haven't had a chance to play it, it's an okay game, but it's still not quite up to the standards that Dark Souls has sort of set. Which is kind of a dangerous thing to, a dangerous path for any game that's trying to emulate that stuff to be just an okay sort of game. Because why would you play sort of the thing that's shadowing the real McCoy, you know, when the real deal's right there for you to play? And not only that, but there's multiple Dark Souls games you can sink your teeth into, and there's Bloodborne, and now there's Neo. Neo, it lives up to the hype very, very much because it actually does the Dark Souls combat system very, very well. It has that very fine balance of having extreme difficulty in certain parts of the game while not being so difficult that you feel like the game's cheating. Anytime I've died in that game, it's just like Dark Souls. I feel like it's my fault. I fucked up, or I didn't really realize that, hey, maybe there's going to be an enemy hiding around that corner, and I just wasn't careful enough. But what's really interesting about Neo is that despite the fact that it handles the combat very, very well, and it borrows so much from the Dark Souls style of gameplay, it's actually got a lot deeper of a combat mechanic system than Dark Souls does, and it works very well. In Dark Souls, for anybody who's never played it, like basically you go through the game and every time you kill an enemy, you collect souls. The same sort of thing happens in Neo. And then you can take those quote unquote souls. They're called something else in Neo. I forget what they're called now, but you take those souls and then you can use them to level up and add a point to somewhere in your skill tree. And depending on what kind of build that you're trying to make for your character, you can dump it into endurance so that you can, slash an attack or run and evade a lot more than other people could, and that you're faster. Or you might want to dump it into being able to carry heavier weapons and armor and so on and so forth. Neo has all that. But on top of that, the battle system is different in the respect that not only do you have to choose a weapon type that you like, because there's dual wielding blades, you can do a katana, there's an axe, there's a spear, but also there's 3 different stances that your character can switch into at any point during battle. And depending on which stance you have, low, medium, or high, you're either going to use really fast, short, biting attacks that take away a little bit of damage, or you can do medium or heavier attacks, which are slower but take away more damage. They're very different play styles. You have to get accustomed to all of them if you want to be super effective, and you kind of have to switch them up sometimes depending on the enemies that you're facing. So you have to worry about that. Also, as you go throughout the game, you're also going to accrue skill points for your weapons. And if there's a weapon that you favor, you can level that aspect of your character up as well, so that they become much more effective with that weapon type. And then as you progress throughout the game, depending on what kind of armor you're having and what your gameplay style is, you can either go towards being a ninja or a samurai. and there's stuff to collect throughout the game to help you progress in those areas as well. So it's far more in depth than Dark Souls is, and it works. It really works. It doesn't feel like it's too much. It feels like a natural progression throughout the game. Level design is also very good. It's very reminiscent of Dark Souls. Again, the enemies are placed in areas sometimes that are very obvious, but there's also a lot of pitfalls and traps along the way that'll screw you up. The one major difference in level design, though, is that where Dark Souls games, they're all very open world. You could be going through a given area and be like, God damn, when am I going to reach the next save point? Oh, here's a shortcut. It brings me back to this area of the game that I was at hours ago. That's really cool. Everything is interconnected. Neo doesn't do that. Neo has every stage sort of its own individual entity. There's a beginning, there's an end, but they're large open areas all the same. So there's still a lot of exploration to find all the collectibles and everything. And also, there's a lot of replayability in this game, because once you defeat a stage, you have the option to go back in order to do other missions. And instead of just dumping you in the same sort of map design, they kind of will put you in different times of day. They'll reallocate the enemies in different ways. Very early in the game, there's a village. And when you go back to it for a specific mission, your mission is just, the soldiers have overrun the town again. Make sure you get rid of all of them. But like, the village is on fire this time. The sky is red, when previously you were in the pitch black of night, basically. So they've actually put a lot of attention and care to detail into reworking things so that when you go back and play older areas, they still feel fresh and new. Every aspect of this game seems to have been really well thought out and done. And even though Neo really reminds you of Dark Souls when you're playing it, it does enough different or new that it really holds its own very, very well. It was definitely a surprise for me. So all the praise that this game's been getting, that it's amazing. Oh yeah, I definitely recommend that one. So
is there any? 'Cause it's a Team Ninja game, right?
Yeah, it is.
Is there any like sort of Ninja Gaiden kind of influence in there?
I would say, see, with Ninja Gaiden, the thing with that gameplay is that it was really fast hack and slash, but you also had to dodge and evade basically constantly. That was basically your secret weapon. Hit your enemy, and before they can strike you, roll out of the way. You were doing it constantly, especially if you were in the middle of, a mob of enemies. This game is, I wouldn't say it's quite like that. I mean, you do want to treat approaching enemies in very much the same way as you do in Dark Souls. If you come across a group of enemies, you kind of want to kite maybe one or two enemies away from the crowd so that you can take them on one-on-one or two-on-one, because if you really get into a battle with more than that, you're gonna die.
That sounds a lot like Zelda, which we'll also get into.
Yeah, definitely, because Zelda's a surprise in that respect as well. But yeah, it doesn't feel so much like a Ninja Gaiden sort of game. It definitely feels more like Souls in that respect. As a matter of fact, they even one of the items that you can pick up in Neo is rocks, so that you can actually toss them at enemies to grab their attention, so that you can lead them away from the pack.
It's crazy because I caught every word of what you just said, and Neo sounds so awesome, and at the same time it reminds me of how, like, I'm not saying this to be like cynical or negative, but like how much marketing in games just doesn't hit me that much anymore. Because like,
well, how can you believe any of the marketing? I mean, everything is just it's upselling everything regardless of how good or bad it is. And, skepticism is very, very good, especially when you're looking at a game that very much looks like Dark Souls. You think, how can anybody out Dark Souls Dark Souls? And I have a feeling there are probably people out there that might even prefer Neo over Dark Souls, because it's that strong on its own. I don't know if I prefer it, but I do think that it's got a lot more intriguing elements to its gameplay than Dark Souls does.
Yeah, like I just saw like like people were hyping this game to high heaven, and like I'm sort of a jerk in that regard, where like I react to the hype in the opposite direction. And it wasn't that I didn't want to play Neo. It's like Neo looked like a game where it's like, oh, okay, so there are a lot of Dark Souls. There's a lot of Dark Souls flavoring in there, this is a game like I'll get around to eventually, and it looks cool. But this sounds fucking awesome.
If you really like the Dark Souls games, I have a feeling you're probably really gonna like Neo.
And I'll get and I'll play and like a Dark Souls type of game from like Team Ninja is.
See, when I hear a lot of like over like a ton of praise for a game, I almost take it as a challenge. Like okay, I have to see if it's actually that good or not, so I can weigh in and have my own opinion about it. And then when I hear a lot of negativity about the game, it's sort of the same way with me. I see that as a challenge as well. Like, well, can it really be as bad as all that? Are people just overreacting? Because you see a lot of that as well. So I do find that I end up playing a lot of games because I want to play them all, because I can't trust anything that anybody else says, because everybody's different. And there are plenty of games that come out that people love that I just don't get into, and vice versa. There's a lot of games that people hate that I've ended up enjoying. So, you know, it kind of goes both ways. You really have to play games for yourself to know whether or not they work for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Neo, definitely recommend that. After that, I think the next game was probably For Honor.
Which I didn't play. I was not. I heard like mostly good things about For Honor, but it definitely wasn't like on my radar.
I didn't play too much of it because when I was sick throughout February, I found myself, and the same held true for Neo. I didn't get super deep into the game because I didn't want to sit down while I was trying to concentrate on my breathing and play anything hardcore or anything that required a lot of effort. I kind of wanted to stick with comfort food games. So my comfort food basically is sitting at the computer and playing Counter-Strike, because I go to a server that I've been playing with the same people, with for like the last 10 years. So it's kind of like playing with family in a way. And also Star Wars Battlefront, just because it's fun for me to play and I don't really have to think about what I'm doing and it's not frustrating. So I did a lot of that throughout February, but I did dip my toes into For Honor. And I will say that the presentation's really good. I think the battle system, even though I didn't really like the fact that it looked like you had to use like sticks for aiming or blocking or whatever, when I was watching the initial gameplay reveal during E3 last year, the battle system is actually something that I'd like to see more of, because what it is you're holding your block stance button basically, and an enemy approaches you, and you have your right stick that has to either block left, right, or high. And basically you have to switch where you're blocking depending on where the other enemy is attacking. And the game gives you a little bit of a heads up. It'll give like a little red indicator in the direction that they're swinging, so you have a chance to block. And when you're playing through the single player campaign, it seems like it's really, really easy to block those telegraphed moves. The difficult thing comes when you're playing multiplayer, because people will spam like crazy and it's almost impossible to know where they're going to be doing it. There's no method, there's no rhyme, there's no reason. It's basically like rock, paper, scissors. Am I going to be right or am I going to be wrong? It's almost like luck of the draw. So the game does have a campaign, and again, it definitely has a lot of like major action set pieces that look kind of cool. And again, the way the combat is constructed, I really like it, and I'd like to see games that actually allow me to not just say, okay, here's my attack button and here's my block button and that's it. I do like that this is a bit more layered, a bit more in depth, and requires a bit more thought. It's realistic in a way in that respect, but it feels all very thin to me. And I know there's probably going to be people out there that would be like, oh, well, it's an Ubisoft game, of course. That's sort of the attitude out there. But I do have to give Ubisoft credit. A lot of people gave them a lot of fucking shit for making Climb the Tower of the Game over and over and over again. And this is something that's actually genuinely fresh and new for them. So I respect this game for that. And I know a lot of people have been enjoying this a lot more than I have, because they really like the PvP aspect of the game. But yeah, it's interesting. There's interesting things about it. There's very well done things about it, but I don't think it's for me.
It's kind of funny with like Ubisoft, because I used to embody, and I'm sure I'm on record on this podcast, like I used to embody that like kind of anti-Ubisoft attitude, and like in some places it was justified. It's just funny because like last couple of major releases that they've had, like at least I want to say like from like that last Assassin's Creed on, maybe, like where they put out games that like that were like good experiences, like where you can get lost in them, but like always seem to get just bogged down in like dumb Ubisoft decisions. I don't know if like, and like For Honor, I watched like gameplay of it, and like it looked like a cool world to just get lost in. Well, even though it's not like that kind of game, but like just the whole like immersion of like the setting of the game and all that. And then like when I see like all the microtransaction stuff that occurs and like all that, and it's just like it switches off for me, and it's like I don't want anything to do with this anymore.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I have to say a lot of the criticisms that have been levied towards Ubisoft over the years. I mean, it's not like they haven't been, it's
They're
not like
not
they've been
unfounded.
unwarranted.
Yeah.
You definitely sort of get sick of playing the same thing over and over again. Like I was playing Assassin's Creed Rogue the other year because I really liked Black Flag, but like I got about probably 3/4 of the way through that game and it was just like, okay, I'm good, just because it was getting repetitive. So I'm glad For Honor is something very, very different, and that they went actually as far outside their comfort zone to actually sort of invent this new battle system for the game. And the battle system works really well. It's just the game feels thin to me, so it's not really holding my interest. I might actually end up like selling it. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I would say it's probably actually really good for other people. Give it a shot, but maybe give it a while, because a lot of people have been complaining about the netcode issues. Apparently they're still a bit of a nightmare. So
that sounds like a Ubisoft game. Like,
yeah, it does. And what's really sad is that even before this game came out, it's like, if I don't know if you follow Ubisoft support on like Facebook or anything, but it's like every fucking week they have a post up that says like, oh, we're aware that there's issues, we'll let you know when we've got it resolved. And then maybe like a few hours later they'll be like, okay, everything's fine again. It's like,
I saw that a lot for Rainbow Six.
yeah, well, it's not just for Rainbow Six. It's like their fucking Uplay goes down all the time.
God.
Which is, it's a lot of people complain about Uplay for that reason. I mean, Uplay is not a bad portal for playing Ubisoft games, except for the fact that they need to get their shit together so that it doesn't keep, going down all the time. It's not like it goes down like every day or anything. It's just, the frequency at which it happens is way too often.
Too often that it's noticeable.
Right. I mean, the PS4 might have a few, down periods throughout the year because of a DDoS attack or whatever.
Or it's Christmas, but
yeah, that seems to be the big time to draw the attention of these, quote unquote hackers.
Oh man, this is only tangentially related. Do you remember like Christmas, what was it, 2015, when like Steam went down like that whole day and there was like a huge like clusterfuck?
Oh yeah, because like people were also able to sort of see other people's account pages or something that they weren't supposed to.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
I remember that. That was crazy.
That was crazy.
That could have been way worse than it was, because apparently you couldn't do anything with like the financial information on people's accounts, but like you could see it.
Yeah.
Which is scary. But yeah. So
I'm looking at I'm looking at like the 2017 in games like Wikipedia page.
Yep.
Yeah, like I didn't touch anything in February except Horizon, which came out on the last day. It came out on your son's birthday, in fact.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a second, because that's not chronologically the last game to talk about in the month, because the next game that I actually got and played was Berserk: Band of the Hawk.
Okay.
I don't know if you've read any of the mangas. Are you familiar with Berserk?
I am, but like not intimately. Like I know what it is, but I've never really like partaken in it that much.
I only got into it about a year ago based on Gabe's recommendation.
Oh, was this okay? This came out. I remember a while back that they were like, oh, here's
the Dynasty Warriors type game based on the Berserk property.
This is that. Okay.
It is that.
How is it?
It's okay.
Okay.
I mean, it's, if you've ever read the mangas, like Berserk is a character that he has a sword that puts Cloud's sword from Final Fantasy VII to shame. It's like he's carrying around, the Last Supper dinner table on his back, and he whips that thing out and he just mows down hordes of soldiers or demons, what have you. the guy's like almost invincible. It's fucking insane. It's crazy how much he's lived through throughout the course of the manga. I haven't read all of it, but I've read enough to be caught up throughout the entire story that they're trying to tell in this game. What I can say about it, though, is that if you've read the manga, there's more to it than that, though. There's a story. There's a lot of character development. There's a lot of sort of political kind of stuff going on from within the ranks of the group that the character's name is Guts. There's a lot of stuff that happens within the band of the fighters, the band of the Hawk that he's fighting with. There's just a lot of stuff that happens. And one of the things that's problematic for me about this game is that it's really, really hard to recommend this game, even though the gameplay elements themselves are very fun. I mean, it's very much Dynasty Warriors. You're running around in these large open areas, these stages where you're just mowing everything down with your blades, basically, and special abilities once you charge up your meters and everything. And it's very effective in that sense. However, in between each level, like, they will give you a clip of story from one of the few Berserk anime films, and then later on in the game, once they progress further than that part of the storyline, they sort of do their own cinematic stuff. But that stuff is just like the characters standing around with like text bubbles on the bottom of the screen. So it's kind of disjointed in that respect. And also, they zip by so much of the finer points in the story that if you haven't read the mangas before, you're probably going to miss a lot of the impact of the stuff that's happening, and you're not going to get it. And it's not the kind of game that's going to draw like newcomers in, I don't think, into the manga series or even into this game in general. I think people are going to feel kind of lost because you're kind of watching like the story of Berserk and its greatest hits. Like, you need more context in order to be able to enjoy that stuff. If you're just looking for a game or you just want to mow down things with your blade because you're really into Dynasty Warriors, fine, but like, there is no better property out there that is suited for this style of game than Berserk is. And that whole story aspect, having the ball dropped on, is very disappointing because they could have done a better job with that. But also, because Guts is so incredibly effective in battle, generally speaking, in the manga, there's a lot of characters that you come across on the battlefield that are sort of like, oh, we're like the guard, like, we're kind of like above the other soldiers. And when you go to attack them all the time, they block a lot, so you don't really feel like you're that much of a badass as you should be. So that kind of defeats some of the purpose of playing as Guts in this game. So as a Berserk fan, I have to say it's just okay. It's not bad, but this game has the unfortunate disadvantage of being released after Resident Evil 7, after Neo, and before Horizon Zero Dawn. So, I mean, like, with all those games that have come out, I can't recommend this one to people.
Okay.
Like, there's far better uses for your money at this point. So, yeah, moving on from there, Horizon Zero Dawn did come out.
It did.
How far did you get into that game? Because I really was not able to touch it, because once I played an hour of it on Tuesday, and I was like, well, my son was born today, and the Switch and Zelda's out on Friday, so fuck it, I'm going to wait.
Oh man, like I played a massively good chunk of Horizon over Saturday. It's hard. I couldn't tell you like where I am in the story per se, like how far, because I don't really have a sense of that. But I did. It's funny because like Horizon came out, that was another game that like I saw everyone like praising to high heaven. And then, like, the first hour of that game, I was like, oh, no, man, I don't know that I'm feeling this, because it felt like I had played, like, so many games that had this style of, like, collect this, craft this, and that, and then, and then it's just, like, this cluttered UI and all this kind of stuff. And that was the first hour of it. And then as I went on, I found myself, like, really into the story. I think so far it's really interesting. I'm curious to know where it goes, but I really like the main character, Aloy. I really like the actress that voices her, because every time like there's a conversation going on in that game with like any NPC or something, like if they're giving you a side quest, like she seems to speak with like this empathetic tone in her voice where it's like it's not like exaggerated in the way like video game dialogue tends to be. Like she cares, and I don't know what. And this is just for like side stuff, and this is not even the main story. And it makes me like playing as her. But then, like as the game went on, like I was super like hours into it, like I was just kind of hooked on it. Like I was enjoying myself because that world is amazing looking. First of all, secondly, like
Yeah, definitely the graphical presentation in that game is fucking amazing based on what I saw in the early part of the game, for sure.
and I'm playing on the PS4 Poor, which is the basic
I
edition.
was too, but what's interesting to know is that throughout the month of February, because my old, well, I shouldn't call it an old Samsung TV. It was less than 2 years old. It had this shadow bar across the middle that was like a few inches high, that sort of started becoming more and more noticeable over the last few months. So with tax season and everything rolling in, I said I've got to replace this thing because this is driving me crazy. I've got a home theater down in my man cave, and just using this TV drives me bonkers at this point. So I upgraded my TV to 4K, which has HDR capabilities. Well, even though I'm playing on the PS4 poor, as you call it, it does output HDR for games that are compatible with HDR, and Horizon is one of those games. And
Oh, nice.
holy shit, even at 1080p, because 1080p, by the way, scales on a 4K TV amazingly well. Like Blu-ray discs, I've noticed, look just as good, if not better, on a 4K TV than my old 1080p TV, which I didn't expect myself to be saying at all, because I thought it was going to be like watching DVD on 1080p TVs all over again. But it's not. It scales very cleanly because they just have to upscale the resolution 4 times.
And
Like
Horizon's a really good game for that, because
yeah. So I really don't. I'm not playing this game saying, "Gee, I wish I had the PS4 Pro."
yeah, like I was afraid of that. Like if there was going to be any sort of performance hitches or anything, but so far it's been pretty good. My PS4, and you know what? To my surprise, my PS4 is not like the jet engine that it is when I'm playing like The Witcher 3 on it. So props, I guess, Gorilla for knowing that hardware well.
Yeah, and what's really nice about it is that that's the same thing that Death Stranding is going to be using too, the same engine.
Oh, I heard, yeah. So I'm getting kind of excited for that too.
It is a great engine. I mean, it looks really well, and it definitely performs very well. I mean, again, I didn't get very far in the game, but like I didn't notice any sort of like hitching or frame slowdown or anything like that.
So I don't want to bring Zelda into this conversation just yet, but like because I know naturally there had been a lot of Horizon versus Zelda going around, but
oh, fuck those conversations.
well, what I mean more is that like props to these two games, but I'm still on Horizon. Like it took me a while to get into the combat of Horizon because I'm so used to like Western like big budget games in which like combat feels like automated, so to speak, where you have all sorts of cues and stuff, so you can do like a slow dodge and an attack and all that. And like Horizon sort of has that through the power, like the skills that you unlock. But I really like that you kind of have to prep for a lot of combat. Like you have your own like detective vision, which is like the focus, I think it's called, where you scan all the robot critters and creatures in the area, and you find out like their weaknesses and they get highlighted, and then you pick like the right weapons for the occasion. And it took me like a while for it to understand how the combat works exactly, because like I was having a hard time early on, and then like I fought like a big boss character sort of, and like it wasn't even a story mission, it was a side mission. And then it fucking clicked like at long last after dying like several times, and I was getting pissed off at myself. Like,
yeah, it really looks like that you have to like keep moving. You have to be methodical, and again, you have to sort of plan your course of attack before you get into things. So
Yeah.
I mean, I like that a lot too, just because, yeah, it might be a little hard, like, and a little intimidating when you first start the game out, but that makes it a little bit more realistic. It actually engages you in what you're doing a little bit more. Than again, a game where you're just running around and like, oh, there's my attack button and there's my block button, and that's all I need to know.
Yeah.
Like, and also it's very interesting that this game is so highly praised and it seems to click with so many people so well, and it's gotten so many good reviews, even though it seemingly borrows elements from so many other games for its core gameplay. Obviously you have that sort of detective mode. Well, that's a Batman Arkham thing. And so many other games have sort of incorporated that since. It's sort of like its own thing now. It's just something that a lot of people do when they're developing games now. And there's also what I hear from a lot of people is that there's very much a Far Cry sort of
There's a
feel
lot
to
of
the game
crafting.
without, yeah,
Yeah.
crafting and unlocking
So
parts of the
much.
map, etc.
The only thing I would ding the game for, even though like you can change it in the options, is like it's the UI is so cluttered. It's just like all these waypoints and stuff, and then you have your little compass up above on the screen, and then like any sort of thing you grab is just like any sort of thing you grab or you use or you craft, and it's just like a text dump like on the bottom side of the screen, like you're playing an MMO, and it's
Ew.
just like, oh god, man.
Yeah,
But
I have heard
otherwise,
some complaints about the same thing from other people as well.
but I got to the like this other part of the map where it's like like you start out in kind of like the snowy area into like these forests and so forth, and then I just started hanging out in like this desert area where the story was taking me, and even that looks. And I'm a sucker for like desert maps, and in games and stuff like that, and it's really good looking, like these Badlands or whatever. And I haven't touched it because I've been playing Zelda all weekend this weekend, but it clicked with me. Like it started slow. I didn't know that I was going to get too into Horizon, but after a certain amount of time that I saw the light, I was like, this game is fucking like addicting, and I'm super into it.
Well, once I dump a ton of time in the Zelda myself too, I'm going to go to Horizon. That's going to be my next game that I'll play through for sure. Very promising what I saw early on. Before we move on to the next obvious topic of Nintendo related stuff between the Switch and Zelda, of course, I just want to say, since I said I did upgrade my TV to a 4K a UHD TV rather, I want to give people a tip if they're going to be using an Xbox One S as a UHD player. Which, first of all, I think it's a fucking embarrassment for Sony that they're selling the PS4 Pro for $400 when for $100 less, Microsoft has undercut them and included a UHD player. Anyway, it's very competent as a UHD player. The picture quality is good, although standalone UHD players I have found do a little bit better of a job with the video. But a couple things that you should know about the Xbox One S. It doesn't actually bit stream the audio from the discs. There's a bit stream option in the audio menu, but like what it's doing is it's still internally decoding the audio from the disc and then outputting to your selection of either Dolby or what's the other one? DTS or whatever. I forget. Yeah, so that might be an issue for some people because they want to get the lossless bit for bit audio quality from their UHD discs. That's part of the selling point because the audio quality on those discs actually do sound a little better than Blu-ray, believe it or not, if you have a home theater at home. But one thing that I had some difficulty with for a little bit that drove me crazy is that there was a little bit of an AV sync delay, AV sync issue between the video and the audio, obviously. It was driving me fucking nuts. And then I realized after doing extensive searching online, somebody suggested turning off the 24 hertz option under the advanced video settings, and that seemed to fix the sync. So anybody who is using an Xbox One S and planning on using it as a UHD player on their 4K TVs, that's a helpful tip if you're having a sync issue. So just thought I'd put that out there since that might save some people some difficulty.
Man, I totally want to watch a movie with like lossless audio.
Oh man, and the fucking picture on 4K. Holy shit. I mean, even films that were mastered at 2K, which is roughly the same as 1080p, there's still a jump in clarity and even detail, and the high dynamic range color it definitely is a game changer. I've also played Forza Horizon 3 a bit using HDR enabled, and it definitely changes things in that game as well. I mean, it's the tough thing about HDR is that it's one of those things that you can't actually see for yourself, since 95% of people out there don't have a PC monitor that's capable of displaying HDR. So you can't just do like a screenshot comparison side by side. And you basically kind of have to get the hardware in your home and look at it that way before you can really see the benefit of HDR, which is a really kind of crazy barrier for consumers, I guess, to be able to get into new tech. But it really is worth it. If I wouldn't say anybody should just go out and ditch their TVs that they have now and just upgrade everything to 4K, but the next time you have to buy a TV, it's worth it.
I might, I know I'm on record because like the last time we recorded, I think like last fall, I think it was around Black Friday and the holidays, and I was like I was looking at TVs because the speakers on my Samsung one had blown, and then I have a temporary solution where I just bought some speakers to mitigate that, and yeah, now
honestly, you should never use any HD TV speakers. They're all garbage.
Yeah, I can imagine. But like I'm starting to like sort of turn around, but I just would love to just want to like save the money for a 4K with HDR to get like the real experience out of it.
Yeah, well, what I bought was a Vizio M series from 2016. I got the 55-inch model, and when it first came out, it was $899, but since the 2017 line will be coming out in the spring, Vizio have, I think, probably like in the fall or early winter, slashed the prices of that particular model, at least anyway. I mean, they slashed them all across the board on last year's models, but this particular TV was brought down to $649. And if you go to like CNET, or if you go to rtings.com, which is another HD TV review website that a lot of people really pay attention to as far as the quality of sets and what they think about it. The Vizio M series is very highly rated, and it's supposed to be the best bang for the buck all around anyway. And in some respects, they say that it's even better than some of the Samsung TVs that were put out last year too. So, yeah, Vizio has come a long way apparently. So that's what I got, and it does HDR. And it's a great entry level, but best bang for the buck. I love the picture quality for $650. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Nice. Damn.
But the problem is that I got bit by the UHD bug, because I was always one of those people that said, look, it's a 55-inch screen in our homes, so it's relatively small compared to a movie theater screen. A lot of films are mastered at 2K, and we're sitting like 10 feet away from the TVs usually anyway. Am I really going to see a difference between 1080p and 4K in the home? I don't think so. Well, once I got the TV, the only reason why I didn't get a 1080p TV is that everybody said, oh, Blu-rays look just as good on a 4K TV, but also 4K TV technology gives you better contrast, which means, all the colors and everything on the screen is just going to pop more. There's going to be, better black levels, and that's going to make everything look better. And so I did it, and everybody was right. So I said, well, I've got an Xbox One S anyway. Let me pick up a UHD and see how it looks. And at the time, I just connected it directly to the TV, because everything in your home theater chain has to be HDMI 2.0 compliant in order to pass that signal through with HDR and 4K and everything. And my old receiver didn't do it. So I got the picture quality on the TV looking amazing, but of course the sound was coming through the TV speakers and looked like shit. And I was like, fuck, I need to get a new receiver now, because I really want this experience. So I did. And then I was having fucking crazy issues with the Xbox One S with the AV sync problem, and I didn't know how to fix it. I thought everything. So I got a standalone player now, which I'm glad, because it does a better job than the Xbox One S at the video output. But yeah, so I'm totally compliant across the board now. But like the TV was like cheap, but getting a new receiver costs almost as much as the TV. And then another few $100 on the UHD player. So yeah, I went in the hole pretty deep, but I'm very happy that I did it. Thank God for taxes.
Death, taxes, and high dynamic range.
And Nintendo Switch.
Oh, Nintendo did a thing.
Yeah, they did a thing.
They released a thing.
They released a thing that people were actually excited about for once.
Sorry, I'm like, it just got so quiet. I'm like sending a text now.
That's all right. Yeah, I mean, what do you got the Nintendo Switch, right? That's what you're playing the new Zelda on?
I have a Nintendo Switch.
How do you feel about it? Hardware wise?
I like the hardware when it's like in tablet. Did you sneeze? Bless you.
Thank you.
I do like the hardware in like the portable like tablet mode. I like it feels good in my hands personally. There was like so much discussed about this Switch hardware where it's like apparently just like breaking down on people or something. I don't know what. I'm not trying to spread like FUD or anything, but it just I don't know. I have had no issue. I've had the Switch. How many days has it been? 3. And I've had no problems with it so far. I mean, it's smaller than
There's a normal fail rate attached to hardware though, and like there's nothing out there right now that suggests that like, you know, the Nintendo Switch hardware is a dumpster fire. You know what I mean? Like the people who are having issues are going to go online, and that stuff is going to get reported by media outlets, and it's going to, you know, get blown up. You know, but the problem is the reason why so much attention has been paid to the Nintendo Switch's hardware failures for certain people is that Nintendo's responses to some of the issues that people have been experiencing has been some of the craziest fucking PR spin I've ever heard in my fucking life.
And I'm not even trying to like defend Nintendo in saying that. It's just like
there is no defense for some of the shit that they've been trying to defend.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, so far, like what I'm trying to say is like I've enjoyed my time with the Switch and playing Zelda, which admittedly is the only game I bought for it. But like, it's kind of crazy. A lot of just stuff I've been reading going on with this system. For
like some people have been having, you know, I guess there's been a few people out there who had some issues with like stuck pixels. It's an LCD screen. So that is something that happens, you know, when you get an LCD screen, like if you're buying an LCD TV, like you're basically playing the LCD screen lottery, you know, like there's going to be some defects on panels. So some people have like called Nintendo and been like, hey, I've got a defect. I don't know why they would call Nintendo at this point instead of just returning the fucking thing to where they bought it, since it's obviously still under the return policy. But regardless, Nintendo has said, oh no, this is something that LCD screens do, and it shouldn't be considered a defect.
Yeah, like what?
What are you talking about? If there's one, even if there's one stuck pixel, like fuck you, fix my machine.
Are you insane, Nintendo? What
they are insane.
About? And the one thing, and I'm going all over the place because I didn't read up on everything, but it just seems like there was a lot going on for some people, like that Joy-Con connectivity problem with the
left Joy-Con in particular. For anybody who doesn't know, apparently there's been connection issues.
Which, I mean, you know, I updated that firmware like the second I plugged it in. So I don't know.
A lot of people said that allegedly fixed the issue for them, but there are other people who said that they're still having that issue.
Yeah.
But like Nintendo's like, make sure you're not playing near any other wireless device. Make sure you're not playing near an aquarium. Make sure that the Switch has a direct line of sight and that it's not behind your television. Make sure you're not sitting too far away. So basically what Nintendo is telling people is that, you know, go to the cabin in the middle of the woods, and the only thing that it needs to be equipped with is a power outlet, and just don't use any 21st century devices while you're using the Switch.
Well, the Switch, the device for serial killers, like out in the woods. Now, maybe my priorities are out of whack here, but the big one for me, and I know we're already starting off on a weird note with this Switch because I have enjoyed my time with it, but like, yeah, you know, we can't not talk about these things going on.
Exactly.
But like, dude, this thing where like you okay, so the Switch, if you don't know, uses micro SD cards. So you can use
Yes.
micro SD or micro SD XC and HC, I think.
I know where this is going, I think.
You cannot copy your saves to the memory card, at least for now. Like your Zelda save, like if you put like 40 hours into that game and something happens to your game or your save, you are like fucked essentially.
Do you know that it's actually even worse than that? There was a story I read today that apparently if you take your micro SD card and you try and put it on another Switch, it
Like
wants you to reformat the micro SD card.
what the fuck is that?
Yeah, so like you can't, whatever data does get stored on the micro SD card, you can't even transfer that.
Like what?
So like if you're like storing games on that thing that you've downloaded, which you would be, like you'd have to re-download them again, because apparently things are going to be tied to your Nintendo account, so you should be able to do that. But like, why won't, like, Jesus fucking Christ?
But you have to deregister like the one Switch, and then like register the downloaded stuff on like another one or something like that.
It's a very Nintendo thing. Like everybody was so happy. It's like, oh yay, everything's going to be tied to my account now. But yet they still won't let game saves leave your fucking system. And there's not like a cloud save system.
Yeah, like, and
like, can you imagine putting like 50 hours in the Zelda and like not being done with the game and then like having your console die? Like I would break shit.
This is the thing. Like I understand discussions on both sides in which, yeah, like I think a lot of people who bought this thing like on day one, like us, like we know what we were getting into. Like we are like glorified like testers for this thing at this point. And I understand that, yes, down the road, like the Wii U had this too, where like they eventually got an update that added like all sorts of stuff, like new features to the thing. I imagine the Switch will get that too down the line. But it's just crazy that like this thing where like, because they're like supposedly according to them, like they're just so afraid of piracy that they just have to like fuck this whole system up. It's just funny how like you boot up the Switch and you look at their menu, right? And it's like the least Nintendo like the menu has been.
Yeah, it actually seems like a genuine, like, clean operating system. Like it's like,
yeah.
I wish my Xbox was like this.
Yeah, and like, there's no like whimsical music. No, there are no Mii's unless you want your Mii as like a little avatar like pick, and that's it. And it's just funny how like the Switch does feel like marketing wise and like release wise and hardware wise, like even though it is a portable gaming console you can play on your TV, it feels like too like this is Nintendo starting to like kind of veer away from what their usual like whimsical family image has been with this thing, like in terms of like the hardware design and like the UI and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just crazy though that like for Nintendo to want to kind of cultivate like a different image, I guess, to appeal to like another demographic for this thing. The things that make Nintendo like that make people go, oh, this is so Nintendo, are like still around on this thing.
Yeah, it's never gonna change. Like like it was crazy. It was a wild ride. Like again, like so many years ago, not too many years ago, but a few years ago at least, Nintendo did that whole like falling on the sword thing. They committed seppuku. They're like, we are sorry. We have dishonored ourselves. We will do better. And they changed their business around a lot over the last few years in order to make sure that they're actually making money. So, I mean, we saw Amiibo and that was popular, and, they did the new Nintendo 3DS and new Nintendo 3DS XL. And of course, all this talk about the Switch and integrating the handheld market with the console market. And here we are, we're in March 2017 and they've made good on all that. But it's like, they've also started incorporating the multiplayer paywall because everybody else is doing it. They've also started doing DLC and day one updates for games, because Zelda had a day one update, which is something that I'm not used to seeing for a Nintendo game. Yeah. So they've incorporated all that stuff. But yeah, all the stupid decisions. Like, I understand that maybe you're afraid of piracy and shit, but like, you should at least integrate a fucking cloud save system so that
Like,
people don't lose tens of hours of progress in their games, you know?
yeah,
Like,
like I mean, do you think like does Nintendo think like Microsoft and Sony aren't afraid of piracy? And I can fucking copy my saves easily, like either on a USB or like their cloud
when
shit.
I got rid of my Xbox One to get the Xbox One S last year, like I didn't even have to like tell my system to like add everything to the cloud. I just kind of uninstalled everything and reset the system and went and traded it in and got the Xbox One S. And that's because there were not too many games that I was playing on it at the time that I would have minded losing my saves on. But like when I got the new machine and I started installing games, like my saves were there. It just happened automatically. It's like the cloud system on that thing works so well. It's like you don't even realize it's working until you need it. You
Yeah.
know? Like, and Nintendo wants to start charging people for their service later this year. Like I understand that, like, you know, the Japanese yen converted to US dollars is rumored to be somewhere between like 18 and 27 or $28, which probably means it's going to be $29.99 a year over here if that holds true. That still undercuts the other competition by quite a lot, which is a positive because I thought that they would probably end up going for the full $50 or $60 a year. But at the same time, like cloud saves in 2017 is not a new thing. If you're gonna redo your infrastructure, and if you're going to lock something as important as game saves to a machine, even though you've made it clear that, oh well, whenever you buy anything, it's going to go with it wherever your account goes. Your saves, you shouldn't lock that behind a fucking machine. And speaking of locking things behind stuff, they still have fucking friend codes.
Oh my god, yeah, that was the next point of contention here. Is that like, yeah, and this was basically
like, and that news didn't come out until like a day or two fucking before the Switch came out.
yeah, that sorry, I lost track. But yeah, like what was it, a day, like the day before that they were like, oh, Switch. The only positive there, the only like positives sort of in that realm was that when I fired up that Switch after like I got online and stuff, like it's very weird. Okay, so it knew, because I guess because of my Nintendo account, like it knew that I had Miitomo installed on my phone, and I used it, and it found all like the people on that friends list that owned the Switch, and then like I started adding people. Like a majority of my friends came from Miitomo basically, and then like the Switch friend code thing. The only positive is that it's not like a per game thing. And it's not like that cumbersome 3DS bullshit way where you both have to exchange friend codes. It's like you just punch in the code and then like they send a request. But like it's just crazy that like Nintendo, for what Wii U had, like Nintendo would do away with the Nintendo ID. And it's like, what was the point? And then like
yeah, because you have to register, like you have to claim like whatever name that you want to use now.
the user ID, yeah. Then the on the account.nintendo.com page or whatever, like you have to pick.
You choose an actual username.
Yeah, and that's how I logged in. But like, why? Yeah, like
what was the point of that if you're still gonna have fucking friend codes?
And is that even related to the My Nintendo account? Like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, I guess it is, because if you're downloading digital games and you want those gold coins that you can't, that you fucking put to like 30% off, like Xenoblade or whatever, like this reward system that doesn't get you anything. Like, this is the stuff where I'm like, wow, Nintendo looks like they're going in a bold new direction with this like console hybrid portable thing. Oh shit, they're putting out mobile stuff. By the way, here are friend codes. By the way, like you can't put your saves on a memory card.
By the way, if you want to use Wi-Fi internet while you're on the go, you can't. By the way, no YouTube, no video. Like I understand maybe the security potential and like being able to like browse the internet, but like no fucking YouTube. Like I personally wouldn't use it for that stuff, but like, you know, they're advertising this thing as the machine that you take on the go wherever you are, and if you know you're supposed to be linking the Wi-Fi wherever it's available to be able to play online, then why wouldn't you have this stuff? Is it just a matter of them wanting to push this console out as soon as possible, or what?
Yeah, like I I watched a video of a YouTube channel called Arlo, who's like it was like the first puppet like fucking YouTube channel I'd ever seen. But like, it was a video that I don't want to just 100% like side and agree with, but it was an interesting discussion about how like the
I
Switch.
just pulled up Arlo, by the way. What the fuck is this?
Yeah, like I haven't watched any videos. It seemed like a pretty good channel. Like I watched a couple of stuff, but but one of the videos was like the Nintendo with like the whole like reasoning behind launching this in March, which I guess part of it is that I think they're like it's related to their fiscal year, either at the end of it or the start of it or something like that. But the video,
I still say that they really needed the fucking. Well, continue. I'll give this thought in a moment.
yeah, that it just basically argued that this was them like doing like a soft launch of sorts, where like they put this device out where it's less about them like trying to get all the momentum at the start than it is like cultivating this library and working the kinks out, but while having this product out, because they know like and apparently this it held true that according to Reggie, like the Switch had like its biggest launch or something like that, or it did like some pretty decent numbers over the weekend in the Americas anyway. They cultivate those numbers, and then like they start building the library, and then like really start focusing on the holidays without necessarily like launching then and then having to, like, I guess compete with the other brands or something like that. I mean, you'd have to watch that video, but that's basically like
I'm going to this channel looks interesting to say the least. This like Cookie Monster looking dude. It's like Cookie Monster went on a diet basically.
yeah.
We talked about this when we were giving our initial impressions about like the future of the Nintendo Switch and kind of what our knee-jerk reaction to the reveal conference was. But like
Yeah.
I'm more convinced now than ever that Nintendo kind of fucked up with their pricing and not including a pack-in with this system. Because the more that I think about it, like, you know, Nintendo, they love to believe that they're not in competition with Sony and Microsoft because they know that they're not going to be the first choice for a lot of people. And they also know that Nintendo fans, the diehards, are going to want Nintendo no matter what anyway. So they're kind of coasting on that for now. But like even though this thing launched in March, the biggest time for this thing to be sold is going to be during the holiday season.
Yeah.
But even if we take that out of consideration and we say, let's go to the store right now and take a look at what's on the shelf. You can get a PS4 Pro bundle with Uncharted 4 for $299. Not the PS4 Pro, but whatever the PS4 is fine enough. It's a 500 gigabyte machine and it comes with a game. If you look at the Xbox, you get the Xbox One S. It's a UHD player. There's also bundles for that, such as the Battlefield 1 bundle, so you can get that game, and it's a damn good game too. Also $299. And then you look at the Nintendo Switch. You know it's inferior hardware. It does different stuff, but it's also $299, and it does not come with a game. Now, if you don't have any of these machines yet, and you've got $300 plus tax burning a hole in your pocket, and you go to the store and you look at all three of these, who's going to choose the Switch over the other two? Not a lot of people, I'd wager. And not only that, but later this holiday season, this thing has to go head to head with the Xbox Scorpio during the holidays. That's gonna be tough, I think, for them. Also, not only that, I think their number one priority with the launch of this system should have been to ensure that a lot of people get their hands on it and can play it even if they don't own it, so that they want it. And including a game like 1-2 Switch would have been the perfect pack-in for them, because, you know, they like to sort of cultivate this idea that their systems are perfect for gatherings at your home and for parties and whatnot, so everybody can get together and have fun. Well, including 1-2 Switch would have meant that people would have picked up the Nintendo Switch, brought it home, they could have had friends over, and then people could have been converted into customers by having that experience. But instead, Nintendo says, well, we want you to get the best value for your money, Reggie Fils-Aimé says. So we're going to let you decide what to buy. So what's instead going to happen is that everybody is going to take that money and buy Zelda and then sit home alone, and anybody who doesn't have a Switch will never see it, will never get their hands on it, because I think the manager at GameStop told me at the launch night that they think that whatever they're getting as far as like a demo unit, it's not coming until late March. And he thinks at that point, it's also only going to be like a screen display, and it's not going to actually have a Nintendo Switch for people to get their hands on. I think in some locations, the Nintendo Wii U had a similar setup, while other places did have actual demo kiosks. But like, that's not a great way to get people to want to get your machine, is to say like, here's a video, here's what it does, and let's not pack in a game so nobody comes over to your house and enjoys these games. Like, they fucked up. I think it should have been either give us a pack in, or it should have been $250.
I don't understand how, like, and having watched like a lot of people play 1-2 Switch, and I had one, like,
you don't want to eat a virtual sandwich as fast as you can?
And I had this, oh God, excuse me. And I had one person just straight saying like that game is just bad. But regardless of that, like, okay, like, no, he said, like, one person said it was bad. A lot of people are just not apparently thrilled with 1-2 Switch, which is,
I want to know who these people that are actually buying that game for $50. I want to know who these people are, because it's kind of like the Spice Girls, like,
yeah, basically
a lot of people apparently listen to them because they sold lots of records, but nobody ever said they listened to them.
But like, I just still wonder how 1-2 Switch wasn't the pack-in game. Like, I still legit wonder, like, regardless of how like some people might feel about it quality-wise. Like,
I think it came down to them not having too many physical games to actually sell at launch. I think that's it. Like, I think they probably put themselves in a position where like the hardware was technically ready, but they didn't have a lot of software. But at the same time, they knew that they wanted Zelda to be a launch title, but like the Wii U was pretty much dead, and they didn't want to hold off that game anymore. They wanted to sell it. So
yeah,
they put themselves in this position where the system came out, and it's like, without 1-2 Switch, it would have been like Zelda and Bomberman. Which, by the way, that game is at least $40. Like, that's crazy to me too.
No, can we talk about how Ultra Street Fighter 2 is like
$40?
It's 40. I thought it was like $50, but like,
I think it's 40, but that's still insane.
Regardless, 40 or 50, you're selling me Street Fighter fucking 2 in 2017 for $40?
Oh, but hey, there's going to be some first-person stuff when you Hadouken and shit.
Are they aware that like you can buy like, oh my God, what was the Street Fighter 2 HD remix from like 2008 for like $10 somewhere?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah, $40 is fucking crazy. I mean, I love Street Fighter 2, but like,
I don't $40 love it in 2017.
Exactly. Like, you could legit go to a retro video game shop and buy an actual copy of Street Fighter 2 for your Super Nintendo for less than $40. It was a very, very common game. Like, it's not a fortune. If you don't have a Super Nintendo anymore, then you'll have to spend a little bit more money. But I would still say like maybe spending like $75 on a Super Nintendo with a controller, and then spending like 20 tops in order to get a copy of Street Fighter 2 is still more worth your money than spending $40 for it on the Switch.
I think like just in general, and I mean, maybe time will tell with its first year. It's just kind of crazy how like the Switch from that presentation, because we recorded like the day after, right? Just about.
Yeah, the day right after. Yep.
And it seemed like it raised more questions for a lot of people than answered at the time. And it's still seemingly the case, possibly. But I think like just generally, without trying to be hyperbolic, it's just kind of crazy how I don't know that they didn't learn from the Wii U launch, but it feels like they didn't learn from the Wii U launch. or it feels like they're just dooming themselves to like repeat whatever mistakes. Which this is not me like out and outright saying that Switch is gonna overall sell like Wii U numbers. I don't know. And like pulling up Game of Sutra, as of right now, it said the headline here is Switch sets new 48-hour sales record for Nintendo hardware in the Americas, and Wii is like second to that.
That doesn't surprise me because I mean this thing is, at the end of the day, if you're just talking about the console without having accessories to take into consideration, it's $299, and the fact that it plays both the part of a home console and a handheld device is very, very attractive. And they do have a pretty decent lineup for this year if you like Nintendo games. I mean, starting off with what is being hailed as the best Zelda game ever by a lot of people so far is definitely a solid way to launch this thing. The fact that they can even take that game on the go is wonderful. And not only that, but like, Mario Kart 8, revamped, including battle mode, is coming out in April. Splatoon 2 is going to be coming out this summer. Super Mario Odyssey is going to be coming out later this year. And there's also going to be a lot of other games coming out, in between now and then. There's going to be some Dragon Quest stuff and other games too. So, I mean, it's going to be a pretty solid year for this thing, I think.
I liked a lot of, I watched that Nindies video they did like the other day, and there was a lot of stuff on there that I thought looked really cool. And I was very glad that it was new stuff too, and not like, here's fucking Braid like from 2008.
That's
like
true, but I don't want to use this as sort of my indie device. Like, I know a lot of people use their Vita that way, so that might be very attractive to those kinds of consumers. But for me, like, I'm just all about
the Nintendo experience.
The actual, the games. And it doesn't have to be first party Nintendo. I mean, there's the Nintendo 3DS has a lot of third party games that I really, really, really enjoy. And as long as those kind of games also come to the Switch, like, that'll be fantastic. But yeah, like, I'm just all about like the main AAA games that are coming to this thing.
Yeah.
And not only that, but like a 32 gig micro SD card inside is not optimal for downloading a lot of games, because I think I Am Setsuna, like right there, is probably like a gig. There's also, I think it might be one of the Dragon Quest games coming out, but like there's already a game that is said to like, if you were to install it and not play it like right off of a cartridge, and you were to get it digitally, it's larger than that card is.
Yeah.
Like, Nintendo already has a game that like exceeds the capacity of that fucking card. Like, that's insane.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'll say though, since we don't have to keep railing on Nintendo, since I think we've kind of hammered in most of the points here, I will say that as far as I'm concerned, like, I do like the hardware.
I generally like it. Like, I feel like when so I've mostly played on TV. Like, I have played in the portable mode, but I've mostly done it on the TV. And like I like the buttons on the Joy-Cons, like the face buttons, because I kind of like the little clickiness to them. But like, it feels like a little small on my hands because my
I've got big hands too, and they definitely it's kind of small.
You're fortunate. I have to grab a pro. I definitely have to grab a pro controller like ASAP.
I did buy one, and it's worth the investment.
It's worth the investment. Like,
it is. It's a lot better than playing. Like, the Joy-Cons are great for when you're playing on the go. Like, but like using it as like a makeshift controller at home, like, it's nice that they give you that like that little docking handle so that you can slide them in and use it as a controller, so you don't feel like you have to buy something else. But it's just not good enough. I will say though that like that little handle with the Joy-Con slid in is actually pretty comfortable, and I know that we expressed some concern earlier this year about the placement of the ABXY buttons with the analog stick right below it, and that we thought that would be problematic. But actually, like, I don't find my thumb hitting that thing at all. The way that your hand rests on the handle of that thing when you're holding it, you actually access the ABXY buttons quite well. And although the stick is like right below where my thumb is, it's not in the way at all. It's like, it's right there. It's a snug fit, but like, I've got big hands, So like if it's not a problem for me, I don't think it's going to be a problem for anybody else. So for anybody who's concerned about that, the placement actually seems to make sense.
Yeah,
Um,
like even though like I do have large hands and I've been playing like on that grip, that the grip that it comes with for the Joy Cons. Like I lost my entire Sunday to Zelda like yesterday. So I mean it was, and really it was, there was no moment where I was like really uncomfortable or anything. But I feel like I would still be better off just picking up that Pro controller if I'm gonna like devote hours and hours into Zelda.
yeah, it's way more comfortable playing on the Pro controller for sure. Um, yeah, you know, it's I do really like the portable mode because with the new baby at home, it has come in handy just like I thought it would. There are times where it's like, okay, I know I've got an hour and we're just kind of waiting for the baby to wake up so that we can feed him, change him, and all this stuff, and just kind of hold him and give him that you know, personal body contact, you know, so he gets to know us and we get to know him. But in the meantime, like I don't want to be downstairs away from the baby and away from my wife and just kind of hang out up there. So like being able to take that upstairs in portable mode and play on that screen has been fantastic. But like it really is amazing how easy it is to just slide that thing into the dock and it instantly shows up on the TV. Like it really works as well as advertised in that respect.
Yeah, and like, and even then already, like, there's like these stories of like people scratching their screens and stuff, which
Well, the
like,
first thing I bought was a screen protector. If you're gonna like, it's shitty that like that's happening to people, and there's no excuse for Nintendo to design something that's actually going to cause scratches on your device or your screen or whatever. But like, this is a screen device. It's going to be used for gaming. Like the first thing that I'm going to buy for this thing is a screen protector. I did. Launch night, the first thing that I said is like, you got screen protectors? Okay, let me take one because yeah, you know, I want to protect this thing. So I'm sorry that's happening to people, but like, why wouldn't you get a screen protector?
but I'm also like, I've been every time I put the tablet back into the dock, like, I feel like I'm putting like a baby down to sleep when I do it. Like, I'm like as gentle as possible about it. So I wonder, like I'm not trying to blame the consumer for it. Like, it could be a bad design thing for all I know. I just wonder, like, how the fuck do you scratch that shit? Like,
Yeah,
how are you
that's
putting
true.
it in the dock? Like, if your screen is getting like that nicked, because yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
maybe they're sliding it in
fucking
at a
like
very slight
slam,
angle.
they're like fucking Michael Jordan into that fucking dock. They're just like dunking it in there.
Yeah, I mean maybe that's possible too. You know, user error. You gotta baby your stuff.
Game.
I will say that as simple as the dock is and how well that it works as far as like sliding it in and then shit appearing on TV,
Slide
that
it
thing
in.
is just a very, very lightweight hunk of plastic. And like I'm okay with that, except for the fact that it was very, very hard to incorporate into my home theater because where I wanted to put it, like I've got my HDMI cables that they you know they get tucked behind the TV and everything. So like I would actually find that like the cable, because it was going behind the TV, was actually like turning the dock in a position that I didn't want it to be. So I had a better line of sight with the thing when the screen was slid into it. And because the HDMI cables that I have are like they're certified and they're not thin and they're strong and everything, um, like they were actually kind of like angling the dock so that it was kind of leaning forward unless I put the screen in. So it's like I can't have that. That's kind of a pain in the ass. Like this thing should have had a little bit more heft to it so that that sort of thing wasn't happening. I mean, it's really finicky. Like if like the cable's not positioned just right, like this thing kind of bends over.
Oh my god, yeah. Speaking like fucking, have you tried that tabletop mode?
No, I have not
Oh my
because
god, that
I've
kickstand really does suck. Like,
yeah, there were some people that were saying it's like, yeah, the kickstand sucks because like I guess when you stand it up, the thing is really standing up. It's not like leaning back in a comfortable position. And I know that like a lot of people were coming down on Giant Bomb for saying it was an issue because the guy was like, this kickstand sucks. Look, it doesn't even work that well. And then he'd like push the thing over to prove the point. And everybody's like, well, why would you push it over, dumbass? And it's like, well, you know, the point is that the kickstand is supposed
Oh,
to
Jeff Beck.
protect your
It
thing.
wasn't even his video. Like there was that CNET video that like everyone kind of lost their minds at. It was a dumb video,
It
but it
was a
was
dumb video, but at the same time, it's like it's a good point to make because the point is like if you're going to be playing this like on a commuter train on a table in front of you or something, or if you're going to be flying on an airplane, or again, this whole thing about like playing it on the go. Not everybody's going to be sitting at a stationary table. They're going to be using some sort of flat surface on a something that's moving. And if a little bit of a shake is going to knock that thing over, then what's the point of even having the tabletop mode for a portable device?
yeah.
So I mean that has the potential to damage screens. So I can definitely say that, yeah, that's kind of a shitty feature. Like, just angle the fucking thing back more,
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll never use it that way, so it's not going to bother me much, but not a lot of thought on Nintendo's part, but it's a good thing that, with all these like shortcomings in its design inherently, because Nintendo's Nintendo, at least Zelda's really, really good.
Man, like
It's fucking amazing, don't you think?
it's probably like the most like legit adventurous Zelda has felt in forever. And I'm saying that as
Since the early 1980s.
no, like I'm saying that as someone who will go to bat for Skyward Sword, but like I understand that game's like many shortcomings, but
Yeah,
like,
I didn't mind Skyward Sword. It was just the areas that you visited were a little too repetitive.
yeah, but that like yeah, I can't, this game is just it's so like the scope of it is crazy. Like I in the unboxing video that I did, and then like I showed like the first few minutes of Breath of the Wild, and just like pointing out I was basically like anywhere you see on this map, like in that distance, like you could just head there, like allegedly, and it's just kind of crazy. Like once you set yourself on an objective, like it is a fucking journey. It is to go to one of those towers that you have to unlock to open up the map. That is one Lord of the Rings movie. Like right there.
You're probably a lot farther than I am at this point right now, but yeah. This game is fantastic because what this Zelda game does is it does what Zelda has not done in a very long time. It doesn't hold your hand at all.
No,
you have a
like
very large opening area that acts as your tutorial area.
Yeah.
But like even then, it's like you just need to figure stuff out. And like there's so many different things to take into consideration in this game. Like as Link, you have to worry about what you're wearing. And not just because of like its, armor defense rating, but also because if you're not wearing the right shit, you can like freeze yourself out like high on the top of a mountain and die. Or if you go into a snow area, later on in the game, I guess there's also going to be areas where it's going to be really stupid hot. Also, you have to collect things so that you can cook them, because you're not going to chop down grass anymore to collect hearts and rupees. You're going to have to you're going to have to hunt wild boar, and you're going to have to, use bow and arrows to shoot them dead and collect their meat. And then you're going to have to collect mushrooms from the bottom of trees. You're going to have to collect apples from the top of trees. You're going to have to get fish, and then you have to cook all this shit. And you can even mix and match and like create different dishes that are more or less effective than others. It's crazy like how much they've like changed the formula for Zelda while also making it still feel very much like Zelda at the same time.
There's a lot of like, it's almost like a teensy bit like one of those like fucking survival games that you see on PC, like that Twitch people love, in which like, and it's not like you have to keep eating to like survive or anything, but it's for your health. Like it's not like you have to keep eating on like a time limit, but like you definitely have to like make
a lot
room.
Because like enemies can fucking smack you down fast in this game if you're not careful.
I must have been gotten bitch slapped in like one hit by these fucking moblins or whatever the fuck, like so many times, and I've died a lot. This is like the first Zelda game where I think I've died more than like twice.
I've seen the game over screen so many times already.
Yes. And the thing, yeah, like I've opened up so much of the map, and I'm just like now getting to, I did one of the main story things. I'm actually in the middle of like a main story thing right now, and yeah, that's the thing too. Like it really just it literally fucking just sets you into the world, and it says good luck. Like it'll tell you like, oh, maybe check out that tower. Like that old man helps you in the beginning, and then
Yep.
that's like it, and it gives you like the gist of it.
And that minimalism isn't just in the respect of like the actual gameplay, but like in the design of everything. Like because the
Yeah,
world itself, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, but like there's something, because there's so much wilderness in between, like, you know, the towns or the shops that you come across. You know, there's something very peaceful about roaming through these lands, as dangerous as they may be. And when you're going from, you know, across the land and you're adventuring and you're journeying and climbing mountains, like there's not an orchestral score to accompany you. It's just the game, it's just the environment. You know, you have a little bit of music here and there maybe to push along the story bits you come across, but other than that, like it's just you in the world, and like that's also very refreshing.
yeah, and I've
You know,
now
you're used to playing Zelda games, and it's like, oh, I'm in Hyrule Field now. Da 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 da
yeah,
da da da. Like none of that shit anymore. You know?
yeah now, and like I'm now pretty much turned like coming around on like the whole weapon durability thing. Because now I'm like finding now I've got like weapons that'll do damage, but I will say like
They still break fast though. Like even the ones that are like heavy hitters that I found so far, at least anyway. Or does
yeah,
that get better?
sometimes they get better, but like I'm not trying. This is not a criticism, but sometimes it can be still frustrating for me. Like when you're in the fight, and then like the game is telling you like, oh, your weapon's badly damaged, and then like your next hit damages it, because then, I mean, you can use the directional buttons on the Joy-Con to like a quick equip kind of thing. You scroll through your inventory real quick, but sometimes you have to like then go to the fucking pause menu to like sort your inventory out and then like equip something new. This is especially true for bows, I've noticed, and like I mean, you know, if you can as long as you're proficient in combat and like you plan your stuff out, and I mean you should be fine, because also like it's not like you're never not gonna find a weapon, but you definitely want to try to find like good weapons at least.
Yeah, because like, you know,
And arrows are like fucking gold in this game. Like you
they
really need to
really, really
stock
are,
up.
especially like the ones that have fire on them. Like
Yeah,
because there's a lot of like bokoblin camps that you come across in the game, and like they're like the weakest enemy in the game, but like the blue ones that you come across in the early game when you only have like 3 or 4 hearts, they can one hit kill you, which is crazy to me. But anyway, I'm not used to that happening in a Zelda game. But like, you know, they'll be sitting around and there'll be like explosive barrels sitting next to them. So I was like, aha, I'm going to do the normal video game thing. I'm going to use a regular arrow and shoot it into that barrel and it's going to explode.
into
Nope. The
shit.
arrow just sticks into the side of the barrel. You have to use an explosive arrow or a fire arrow in order to ignite those things.
Or like you throw a bomb, like if you or a remote.
Right, right, right. Once you get that ability.
And that's the thing too. Like I've found I like doing those shrines. They're actually fun. I've been mostly investing those towards hearts. Uh,
Yeah.
but the thing I
I
think
think I think I got one heart and I have enough to go to back to Kokiri Village, and I think I'm going to do one more stamina because I think I could use another stamina wheel because I've been trying to climb some places where I'm like, fuck man, like how much do I have to cook to increase my stamina in order to get up this thing? So having a little extra stamina is going to help. But yeah, I'll probably end up doing a lot of hearts a little bit later on.
that's the thing too, is that I think the biggest thing for me in this game is that you're not blocked off from like anything practically in this game. Like,
You can climb anything and everything
and
that you find.
it was so funny because like that's I found like my second shrine, and there were like these like different colored rocks, and when you see different colored rocks in a Zelda game or a crack, you naturally think like, oh, I'm gonna have to bomb these. But like I had no bombs, I didn't know where to fucking get them or whatever. So I'm running around these like ruins trying to find like the maze entrance until I saw like oh, there's like moss and leaves and shit on this wall. I can just climb over it. I was like, oh boy, all right. So I did that. I did that shrine. But yeah,
That's
like
the thing. Like there's so many things that we've been trained in Zelda games over the years that were very video game like things that we've been trained for, like those cracks in the wall, you know, where we put the bomb there, where there's a lot of other simple things that like you don't really look for in this game, even though it's because this game follows a lot of like rules, like of like realism in a way. You know, it's like if it's something that you think you can do reasonably, the game will let you do it. Like I could be on top of a cliff and I could see a couple of bokoblins, you know, down on a hill or something, and oh, here's a log. I could push this thing and destroy them, and without having to get down there and even engage in battle. You know, there's boulders you can push off of cliffs, like, you know, and also like, oh, I can't reach that area. Oh, but hey, I could use this axe and knock down this tree, and that can serve as my walkway. Like, there's a lot of things in this game that are like that. It's like, it's kind of commonsensical, but because we're so used to playing video games where this kind of stuff isn't integrated into any core gameplay most of the time, you just don't think of it until maybe the game says, maybe you can do this. But the game doesn't really do that all that often, so you kind of have to figure it out on your own.
yeah, like because back like almost every Zelda game in the past is just like I can't do this thing. I'm not supposed to go here yet. And then once you get the item from the dungeon or whatever, and then you can do the thing. And here it's just like
It's like Dark Souls. It's like you can go anywhere you want, but like you'll know that you went way out of bounds if you get fucking bitch slapped right away.
oh my god. And yeah, there was one like sub boss in the game, man, that like fucking wrecked me like 3 times. I just gave up on it. I ran the fuck away, man. And that's another thing too, man. Like check your pride at the door, because like you're gonna run into some enemies or you'll get ambushed. Even
Try
like
different weapons, by the way. I'm gonna tell everybody that now. Like,
yeah.
there's enemies that I've tried to like hit their weak spot, very obvious weak spots, like with like blades and whatever. But like it took a different kind of weapon in order to be really effective against that thing. So yeah, you're going to come across a lot of that stuff too. You're going to have to experiment. If something's not working well for you, like try changing up like whatever you're using. You might find something way more effective.
Yeah.
This game is great.
It is, yeah, like, and you know, and I in the early parts of it too, I was legit like frustrated, and I started like, nope, I'm not letting this ruin this for me. Like I kept getting my ass kicked so much, and then like
As long as you keep exploring, you'll find what you need. Like I remember, like one of the shrines that you have to go to in the tutorial area of the game, it's like, you know, it's winter, and I was like, I walked in there and I started freezing and dying like immediately. My heart started going down stupid fast, and I was like, how am I supposed to get in here? Like, what's supposed to warm me up? Like, I already explored a lot of everything, and I can't figure out what to do. And you know, I'm not going to give anything away, but like, you know, I just kept kind of exploring and looking for areas that I hadn't come across yet, and I ended up finding an answer. That's another thing with this game. Like you know, it's not going to be very linear for you. You might find an area that's going to smack you down like that just because of the environment. And you know, you can't give up. You just have to keep looking and find a way.
yeah, like it's definitely this is
like such a refreshing change of pace for this series.
It is the close. Man, we always do this shit now with hard games, but it really is sort of like Nintendo's Dark Souls, man, in a little bit in its own way.
A little bit, yeah. But like once you start getting used to it, then you're way more effective, and then you don't die, I don't think, as much until you come across enemies that are outside your quote unquote skill level, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. It was like the first day of it. It was like if you ever seen that movie Castaway. This is how I put it.
I love that movie.
It's like in the beginning he makes a spear and he's just kind of like flailing around in the water trying to like catch a fish, and he can't, and he throws a spear in the water and he's just not doing shit. And then like by Sunday like afternoon, I was like the Tom Hanks where like he had been on the island for 5 years and he could just catch a fish like by throwing the spear at a distance and hitting it in one go. That was me like on Sunday. I was like, fuck yeah, like I'm kicking ass at this game. Because you do find some good like armor eventually. Like story-wise, you'll get good gear. I imagine, and I think like I'm guessing down the road, like you probably get the Master Sword at some point. I don't know when. I don't know if that even happens. Who knows? But
I don't
like
know. All I know is that you had the same experience with some big chested fairy offered to
to
enhance my
enhance
pants.
my pants, man. Like, what the fuck?
So that's a good way of going about upgrading your stuff too, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like rupees are not just things like you just find willy with nilly either. I notice.
No, I feel like you're gonna come across them in chests, and maybe certain enemies might drop them, or maybe they might be hidden in some crates that you can break open. But for the most part, I really feel like, because I that's the thing that's a problem for me. I've come across some stuff when I'm like shopping in villages where they want an arm and a leg for shit, and I'm like, I've got like 78 rupees. Like, you want how much? I feel like you actually really need to actually engage with the economy in this game and actually sell a lot of supplies that you find. I feel like there
Basically,
might be a little bit of a grind in that respect in this game.
the one key is to make like a lot of good food dishes and sell them because food dishes will net you pretty decent amount of rupees. I notice.
Man, I make that shit and I don't want to sell it. I want to keep it for myself.
Yeah, that like I get that too, and like
But it's always, you could always go out and find more though.
yeah, definitely. But yeah, like it still it feels like Zelda, but it's not. It's like this really good. It's a good change. It's a change of pace in which like you really can just like chill and do whatever you got to do, or you can just look at the whole map and just point somewhere and say that's where I'm headed next. And like there's no like there's no breadcrumb trail, I should say, excuse me, to really hold your hand to them. You just do whatever.
So yeah,
And
man, Zelda.
it's really
I think
good.
that's all that we can really say without spoiling anything about the game, or maybe even more. I probably included like a minor spoiler here and there, but
There's nothing too big. Like there's nothing,
nah.
and the story is so like it's again not to do the whole it's like Dark Souls, but like it's a lot of the minimal stuff is through the like environment. Like the story is like minimal in like its environment phase. You just know that like you had to do this, like you're resurrected after like 100 years, and you got to do your thing to stop Ganon. And
But
you learn
that story starts filling in, and I feel like
it
Zelda's
does.
always actually done that. Like, they'll be like, okay, here's a story bit. Now go to these 7 palaces and beat them all and do all that stuff. Then you can do this.
And there's
So
voice
that,
acting in this too,
yeah.
like throughout cutscenes and stuff. And I was like, whoa, everyone's British. In this game, like, but yeah, like it's I don't know how I can put like this game's scope into words, man. It's just so freaking massive, and it's an adventure. Like it feels like and even though like that, mostly it's just like I'm exploring towns. I'm like looking for shrines and stuff to like build my hearts, but everything just feels like an adventure along the way.
Yeah, like there's horses in this game, and it's not like you go to a stable and then it's like, okay, here's your friend Epona.
You have to like tame it.
You have like there's wild horses, and you have to sneak up on them and just sort of trick them and jump on their back, and like that's cool. But like at the same time, because there's so much to find, like resource wise around the land, like I kind of don't want to use that fast travel option to ride horses from point A to point B. I kind of would rather like, foot it wherever I'm going, so I don't like miss anything.
Footing it feels like a lot more practical to me because sometimes I'll find an area and it's like, oh, I'm gonna go climb this shit for a while, so buy horse. Like it'll be a while.
Yeah. Yep. So, I think we've exhausted Zelda enough at this point. There's a lot of other stuff that I've been wanting to talk about over the last couple of months that we're not going to get into tonight because we're already at the 2-hour mark. But I think next time we come back, I think we'll come back relatively soon, way sooner than last time, because I still want to talk about that GameStop Circle of Life stuff. I want to talk about what happened with PewDiePie.
Yeah.
Yep. Because it's so interesting to me that like a week after we had our last podcast, and I was kind of like, yeah, he's been kind of rubbing me the wrong way for, baiting people into subscribing to him by the tens of thousands so that he could get up to 50 million. Like a week after that, he got in trouble for like anti-Semitism. So
yeah, that'll
crazy.
do it for you.
Yeah, that'll do it for you. Now he's lost a lot of fucking money, but we will talk about that next time.
And anything else that occurs between now and then the next podcast.
Which won't be any new Nintendo games because there's really none coming out until like April. So, yeah.
Basically.
Until next time, everybody, thank you very much for joining us. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Peace out.
Peace out.